And I had a lot of feedback from people that were like, this reminds me of when I would go and explore rock pools as a kid. And I'm like, that's so good. You can do that now too.
Yeah.
Like, you can still do it. It's still, I know that brings you joy. I know that that memory brings you joy. You can make new memories of being in nature in the exact same way. I am very passionate about, keeping that childlike way of looking at the world still as an adult.
Welcome back to the podcast. I am here in Enterprise Tasmania again. Not been to Enterprise Tasmania for the podcast for a very long time, so thank you to Enterprise. I'm here with Audrey Carter. Audrey, painter.
Yes.
And just this week started your honours program.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really looking forward to hearing about your plans for that, but also what inspired it. So, but first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Yay, thank you for having me. So excited to be here. I just love a chance to talk about art, honestly.
Yeah. And we caught up last night at Hamish Wilson's opening.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really cool,
Yeah,
and we just
so
got
good.
talking about staring at paintings and looking at art and
traveling,
all sorts, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're just back from Melbourne, aren't you?
Yeah, I came back last week just for a little trip. I've got family up there, so it's so fun to just go up and be in a different place and go to the art museum and get to see some different art, because I always come back amazed. Like, I went to Malaysia a couple of years ago, and at the end of the trip went to the main art gallery there and was just like revitalized. Like, it's that exhausted part of the trip where you're tired, but then I came out of that feeling like I'd been like reborn. It was just like so good.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I used to, in my previous career as an academic, I would go away to conferences, and I always made sure that I would dip out of the conference and go to a gallery, museum, or something to get that. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And so you've brought that back to Tassie, and you were just showing me through some sketchbooks. They're right here. Yes, yeah. So your sketchbooks and work that you've been doing for many, many years. So I'd love to get into that because you said you've got family in Melbourne, but you've mostly grown up here in Tasmania, and it is your connection to place that informs your artwork. So where did that all begin?
Where did the art begin, or the connection to place?
Oh, you tell us.
Well, I have loved art since my mum could put a crayon in my hand at 9 months old. I have always been very passionate about it. I think from a really young age, I was, having that toddler tantrum at the end of the day, and my mum would put me in front of an easel, and I would immediately be relaxed and immediately feel like at peace. And I was going to kindy, but when it was time to go to school, my parents realized that all the art programs that they had were they wanted a specific type of art from you, and a specific style, and they knew that I had too much passion to be put into a box. And there was many other reasons why they decided to home educate me, but that was one of them. And it meant that I was supported all the way up until the age of 17 by my mum, who was and is a designer. She did textile design at uni, and there was a lot of, spending so much time doing art history. I did art history for a whole year, and finding ways to bring art into my education. Like, I would make these illustrated comics about science when I was learning about science. There was always ways to weave it in because I loved it so much. And I literally would spend hours and hours every day just drawing and drawing and drawing because I couldn't help it. I've always been an observer as well. Like, I've always watched the world around me very quietly, and I think that weaves into my practice now as well, because I do portraiture and I also like to paint the environment. So that bringing my own observations and my experience in life, I think, is just so inherent to what I do. But yeah, I went to college because I needed more knowledge that my mum wasn't able to fully give, as well as, you know, new experiences, and that eventually brought me to uni, where I have absolutely nerded out for the past 4 years, and now I'm doing honours because they can't keep me away. But yeah, I'm very excited to do my honours this year. Yeah.
Cool. So before we get to where you're at now, yeah, so that's the art side.
That's
of it.
the art side, but
Yeah.
there's other sides to it.
So
as well.
so your mum was a huge influence, and gave you the time and space to sketch, and develop your observational skills. Right.
Mum was always so supportive, and you know, for a long time I thought that art needed to come from my brain, and didn't originally make the connection that I could draw what was in front of me and what I saw. I thought that was cheating somehow. I thought that, like, if I drew what was on the table, then that was cheating. But she helped me a lot with that, and I eventually kind of clicked, and I was able to, you know, I rapidly improved after I started drawing from life, obviously. And yeah, she's always been so, like, both of my parents have been so supportive of me being an artist, and you know, knew from so young that that's my thing, and that is what they're going to put all their support into helping me do. I did, you know, little workshops here and there, and I went to VCA when I was like 15, and did like a week-long oil painting course, and that was the first time I used oil painting, and I loved it. And it was like this, I was getting so much knowledge from it about painting portraits, and all of the things that I learnt in that workshop I still do now. I still use all the time.
Yes.
It's just force of habit at this point.
Cool.
But yeah, that's the art side. But
yeah, I saw so we met at Maggie Jeffrey's studio last year when we had a little meet up, and then I came to the grad show and I saw your final year undergraduate body of work, and my comment to you at the time, I've just said that this morning again, was you must have had such a happy childhood, because the paintings that you had at the grad show, that's what that symbolized to me.
Yeah, they were all about that childhood that I'm really grateful to have had. I think my parents really made it their mission to give us, me and my sisters, the greatest childhood that they could give, and that involved spending a lot of time in nature and with the seasons and observing, and just being so engaged in what's around us, and, you know, doing little day trips and exploring, you know, the tessellated pavement and different areas, and just, you know, we'd go on bushwalks in autumn and go and look closely at the mushrooms, and just always there is so much, they always put so much importance on just being connected to each other and what's around us. And we have a garden as well, and chickens, and my parents are both really into permaculture. And so, you know, there's a lot of those sorts of ethics in the way that I was raised as well. I'm actually doing my permaculture course myself this year in April, finally, and I'm going to be able to, you know, learn some of those design practices and bring that into my own art practice as well, which is really, really exciting.
That's super.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we're starting to get into this connection to place and the values that your parents have instilled in you around the environment that we live in, I suppose, play into your work. So just quickly, to help the audience understand that grad show work, these were paintings that represent images from your childhood.
Yeah, they were images of me and my sisters, that of moments that we were just amazed by nature and just like full of awe at what was around us. It was that like, whoa, sort of expression that, or even, you know, there was that hands, that tactile. There was a lot of paintings I did that were, yeah, hands holding like sea stars or touching things, because I feel like that's a really important part of being a kid in nature, and now as well. This like, yeah, this tactile interaction. And yeah, those paintings were taken from images from my childhood because I was home educated. There was a lot of evidence of me doing things. So there's like full archives full of like photos of me growing up and being in nature. So I had this huge amount of source material to draw from for that exhibition.
Yeah, amazing. And you recently painted one of the signal boxes, Sandy Bay Road.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think I recognise that the image on that was that also on a canvas?
Yeah,
at the grad show?
That was kind of like expanding one of the paintings I did on campus. That was actually the first painting I did for that exhibition, and I really liked the size of it, the length. I feel like it's a really interesting sort of way of cropping things, and I wanted to expand on that, and it was exactly the right size for a signal box. So I wanted to kind of expand on that like idea of rock pools and beach combing and looking closely at sea anemones and crabs and the rocks and the seaweed, and yeah, that whole signal box was about that, and sort of stretching it around four sides and making it kind of these different snapshots into different worlds. And I had a lot of feedback from people that were like, this reminds me of when I would go and explore rock pools as a kid. And I'm like, that's so good. You can do that now too.
Yeah.
Like you can still do it. It's still, you know, I know that brings you joy. I know that that memory brings you joy. You can make new memories of being in nature in the exact same way. I am very passionate about, you know, keeping that childlike way of looking at the world still as an adult. It's so good for us. It's really healthy, I think. But yeah, that whole project was so great, and it was really good experience being able to, you know, do something local and do something that was like, I got so much feedback from people in the public because I was right on a main road, and it was amazing getting to like paint in front of people, and you know, getting so much getting to understand like what people really like to see, and any type of human, like every single person you can think of, like people that know nothing about art still trying to understand it and still wanting to know about it. I think that's really beautiful, and I think that should happen more as well. The general public being included in those spaces, I think is was a great experience.
Yeah, and Hobart's very good at that. Many cities around Australia do have commission artists to paint the signal box. So I met some people yesterday on Elizabeth Street, I think it was. Painting.
It's a great
painting a signal
project.
box, and we had a chat, and I made their portrait because they had a wonderful story behind it. And that's the thing about your work is that there's this incredible story of your childhood, and I guess and this childhood in nature and close detailed observation of nature that you are now trying to understand through your studies.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's so much. I think a big part of that close observation was I have to say, my dad, who is a botanist and works in threatened species, and I would grow up, you know, learning all of the scientific names of plants as he'd take me out on bushwalks, and we'd it was always that very early stage of understanding it in a scientific way from his perspective and a more artistic way from my mum's perspective, and that overlap between them. And yeah, you know, because of him, I feel like I have so much, you know, I just inherent knowledge of the threatened plants and animals that are around, and sort of I think there's a lot of importance that needs to be put on the things that aren't cute and fluffy, and that's what I've learnt a lot from him as well. Is there's so many incredible things in nature that deserve more of a spotlight to be sort of protected as well, which I want to do in my work more often.
Yeah, and so this is a really strong ethic, and I think in our conversation before this, and we'd met a few times before, but it hadn't really come to the fore until we started chatting earlier. Your strong connection to the environment, but also you used the term anxiety about the environment. I think.
Yeah, climate anxiety.
Climate anxiety.
Yeah, it's a very real thing that I think, especially my generation, but also you know, Gen X and millennial and everyone experiences. It's this anxiety about the climate and the future, and we see so much of it every single day. You can open your phone and see, you know, 15 different things happening across the globe that's so anxiety inducing. And I think we just see so much of it that I think it's important for art to start reflecting things that we can control and that are around us, and humans, you know, we can still protect and engage with, and the optimistic side of it. I really, it's a whole other tangent, but the concept of hope is very real, and I don't know if it's healthy. I think it's interesting to sort of think of it as more of an action we can take rather than this sort of like, I hope someone does something about this, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Sort of being like, I think hope can be very, you know, there's no action. There's I know that there's a term called active hope that I haven't looked into a lot, but I know what I do know is that it's really important that we can figure out what we can do and what actions that can be made to protect what we've got, rather than hoping that someone does something.
Well, one thing for me and hope. So, yeah, in writing my last book, I explored the idea of hope as a political act.
Yeah.
And by communicating hope, it leads to action. It's a step before taking action. And I think that it is really important.
Yeah.
Because when you went through your painting, it's not immediately obvious that you're addressing climate anxiety. And yet you're having all these beautiful conversations with people who can relate to what you're painting. And then you're saying, well, yes, you can still go and explore rock pools. But by inviting people to go and explore rock pools, your artwork is then helping them to, it gives them hope.
Yeah.
That there is a better world.
Maybe it's optimism. Maybe it's yeah. I think, you know, it's complicated. I think hope can be a step, but there needs to be another step after it, because I think for a lot of people, at least from my experience, it can also lead to just waiting. You know.
Well, I think in like geopolitics, geopolitics right now, there is, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, there is this lack of hope. There's this hopelessness. It's like we feel powerless.
Yeah.
Whereas what I get a strong sense of here in Tassie is, you know, without being overtly political, but the one thing, this connection with nature that people like yourself have, it does fuel a politics around that's different. It's not coming from a place of lack, it's coming from a place of abundance. And you just described how your parents encourage you to embrace the vitality and the vibrance and the abundance of nature here in Tassie. And I said to you before, you know, lived here 5 years and moved here and bushwalking a little bit and fishing a little bit and just really going out there and connecting with things that I'd never really had a strong connection with.
Yeah, totally.
But like you growing up, my parents we'd go for walks in the country, and you know, we'd camp and there were all these things, but for me it wasn't a thing, you know, it wasn't as obvious perhaps. But then having lived in the urban for most of my adult life, to then now be back in the country. And even here, you said before, you know, Hobart, we're right here in the middle of Hobart, you know, on the fourth floor of one of the big buildings in Hobart, and yet there is the ocean right there.
Exactly.
And there are the mountains up there.
And they're 15-minute drive away from each other. Like it's, we are so surrounded by nature here. We are so entrenched in it. And I think because of that, if most Tasmanians you talk to will have some story or some connection in some form, even if they don't think they do. It's this.
And people like me move here to gain that connection. We want to move away from those geopolitics or that urbanization or whatever it is. There's something very special happening here. But I think there's also something that is perhaps generational, and this is just my view, so feel free to suggest otherwise. But I was saying to you before, and I was living in London about 7 years ago, and every Friday of the summer, and it wasn't even summer holidays, it was like, but your generation, kids wagging school, taking the day off from school, and teachers and parents going with them, but generally teenage kids getting the bus, getting the tube, banners and signs and stickers and all sorts, going into town to, going into protest for the climate, to campaign and protest. And if my memory is, it's almost every week, but it reminds me of another word you were using before. So other than hope, joy. You were talking about joy before we started interviewing, and you've started to describe that a little bit. But there's something about your generation that there's this vibrancy, there's this vitality, there's a lot of colour. And there's but it's action through showing this joy that you have for place. So what is your joy?
What is my joy?
And how, what did you talked about observation and stuff before, but what is?
I think for me, color is everything. I think that from an artist's perspective and an observer, I find so much joy in watching and observing what's going around me, but also drawing color from it. And being in nature, there is so much color. I think there's sort of this concept that nature is just green. But for me, I think that nature can be pink, it can be red, it can be orange, it can be purple, it can be blue. Like there's so much to it. And I think you just need to look a little closer. In my work, I really like to exaggerate color, and like, if I'm looking at the things on this table, I can see yellow on the rim and pink down here, and then the shadows are purple and blue. There's this sort of like saturation that I find is really interesting. And finding colour that isn't quite there. It's almost like this invisible colour, this invisible world that comes with, it appears when you're looking close. And I find so much joy in that. I mean, in the way that I dress, I love bringing colour into my own clothes, and that inspires my art as well. It's that innate expression of vibrancy. But, being in nature, it's that there's so much around to be joyful about. There's so many creatures. There's going beach combing and turning over rocks and finding little things scuttling away. There's climbing up on the mountain and seeing, the ficus turning orange, or these soft shrubs that are close to the ground in the alpine areas. I think there's just so much beauty, and through that there's so much joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely, that's what I see in, you the way you use color in your painting. It's almost hyper real to me. It's sort of, it's not real. You're not dealing with realism, but your memories are very vivid. Is what I see, is that in the colors in your palette.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not soft.
Yeah, I think that's something that will always stick with me in my art is that color. I think in my work I'm wanting to shift away from realism, I guess, and more into something that's more figurative and emotive. I think that I have relied on photography for a long time, and while it's a great resource and great for references, it has stilted me a little bit. And I'm at a point where, especially with my honours project, I want to make things feel more loose and more fluid, and really capture that human nature overlap that feels very innate and expressive and emotional in some form, whatever comes up from that when I do it.
So taking yourself back to that childhood where you were looking close up at nature.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of freedom as a kid, like thinking about the art that I would make as a kid, and all these barriers are not there, and you kind of you capture life in a very expressive way that isn't what people think it's meant to be. And I definitely want to kind of harken back to that and look at how kids can express the world around them, but also how I see things now.
Yeah, of course. Time. Yeah. Last night when we called up, you were talking about impressionism. Yeah, and how that, you could look at a Monet for forever. But I mean, at the time, obviously, it was actually quite contentious. Impressionism was very contentious as a movement, but and now it's so normal and every day. We can see an impressionist painting and just accept it. But it is, but it as a there's something about impressionism that you feel the vitality and the joy. Yeah. And and it comes through those colours, but it's how those colours are brought together, right?
I think.
So what is it about impressionism for you?
I have a lot that I love about impressionism. I think it's really interesting how impressionism, came up in the Industrial Revolution, where photography was being invented and people were capturing life through photographs. And impressionism was this thing where people were capturing what they could see with the human eye that photos couldn't get, and it wasn't about being as realistic as possible anymore. It was more about emotion and mood and light and all of those things. And I think that's really relevant now as well, when we have, social media and people trying to capture realism. We have so much abstract art and so much beautiful figurative art, but I still think that there's a lot of influence. There's AI and there's photography and all of these things, and they're interesting in their own ways, but I still think that impressionism is, I just love the way that it feels more lifelike in a way, because it's a human expression that a machine simply can't replicate. It can try. Yeah. AI can try, but it's never going to be quite right, because you can't replicate what is felt and what is seen in that exact moment. I love Monet, and I love the way that he captured the changing of the seasons and just living life and being in nature in his garden, and capturing the details in that. I think, he was able to replicate his own experiences in a way that people obviously have always really related to and really understood. I love that about Impressionism, and I still have so much inspiration from it. And one day I hope that I can go and see some for myself. I mean, there's also like Van Gogh and post-impressionism, and my mum was saying to me earlier that when I was really little, like 2, and we would travel up to Melbourne for my mum's work, we would go to the NGV and there was a starry night, and I was just amazed by it. Like I just was staring at it for so long because it's the starry night, but I think there was something.
But you're 2.
I'm 2. Like
Yeah.
I was just like captivated by this color and the way that it's like was swirling, and just being 2 years old, and I'm still the same. I still have that same amazement at those sorts of impressionism and post-impressionism as I did at 2 years old.
I can sit and look at I Francis Bacon I mentioned last night, but I have a catalogue of Ed Ruscha images, paintings in a book, and I can look at that forever. So I have this thing about lines and modernism, but your thing is this human connection to nature, but also that interconnectedness with each other. So Impressionism, your influences, taking everything you've done and observed so far with your artwork into your honours program. Are you able to share with us what you're hoping to achieve this next year? Yeah.
I don't really have like a really specific, I know what each image is going to look like, but I know, I've kind of explained the things that are really important to me, and I think that's what my honours project is going to be. It's sort of like drawing from those sources of childhood, from climate, from, I also have always loved capturing people in portraiture. That is like the core of my work has always been portraiture. I've only just started including nature, which is, this whole other thing. But that as well is the people around me, the people I love, and the people who love each other.
Yeah.
That is like the thing that I is really wanting to keep in my work always is humans, and because I love people. I think capturing these people in nature is what it's all about for me. So in my honours project, I kind of intend to create this series of work that is overlapping these things figuratively and colourfully and joyfully, but also this very tactile interaction with nature. And I'm not a sculpture artist. Don't really know much about installation, but I have, considered different forms of engaging with it, because, I think maybe I can find a way for people to think about that sensory connection through looking at paintings. But, maybe I could include like a bucket of sand where people can plunge their hands into it, or like crinkle some leaves between their fingers. I really want to capture that. You can go out and interact with nature in some form. Whatever will come from it, we'll see. But I think that's where I am at the very beginning of my.
And this is the real value of the honours degree, is you have it's not quite a full year, but you have 2025 to explore this, to extend your practice in whichever direction you wish to go.
Yeah, I wasn't originally going to do it. I was, at the grad show going around and telling everyone how much I wasn't going to do honours. And then probably the next day I wrote up a pro-con list of doing honours, because I think I kind of realised that that was done. And now that I'm out of all that hard work, you know, I think as I was doing it, I'm like, I don't want to do a whole other year of this. But now that it was out of the way, I was like, oh my God, I have this year ahead of me. And I actually think I have more to do. I think I have more to figure out. And I think doing honours means that I have support around me and I have a studio, because finding a studio in Tassie is really hard. I think it's very competitive. And if I can have one more year of getting support and feedback and really building my practice and figuring out what it is exactly I'm trying to capture, that's what I want to get out of it, I think. And that's what brought me to decide to do it in the end.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, that point about studios, that's why we're here at Enterprise today, with this bland wall behind us and this poor plant that actually is surviving much better than the plant that's over there. But I think, so it doesn't really symbolise what we've been talking about, your connection with nature here, but it's as close as we can get in this space. But anyway, I'm still very grateful to Enterprise because you now have this amazing studio at the university that you can take full advantage of. But yeah, we did almost we did try to schedule your interview in your family record shop.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other part of your story, I guess. But you the one thing you helped me with here was actually the little setup. We were talking about lighting for the video, because you do the social media for the record store.
Yeah, I do the content creation for the record store. It's mostly my mum's ideas. I will give her credit for that. But it's you know, I record and film and edit. I did acting for a really long time.
Oh, okay.
Just as a hobby. And that's kind of informed my ability to do that stuff. But I'm trying to bring that more into my own practice as an artist as well, and social media on there, because it's very important to get yourself up there on the internet. Unfortunately, it's a hard thing to remember, to go, oh, I need to set up a tripod to film myself while I paint. It's challenging because it can draw you out. I find that it really pulls me out. Yeah. But it's kind of vital to document my work and share it so that people kind of understand what I'm trying to do and why they should care about me, and why that, you know, it's that business side of being an artist. Yeah. But you know, I posted something the other day and it's doing really well. And I have plans to do, I'm gonna like record myself setting up my studio, like finding ways to, you know, record things that I'm doing anyway. I think there's so many artists I talk to that it's really challenging to figure out and to know how to do it properly in a way that people care about and want to engage with. But it's, you know, becoming a self-employed artist, it's this, like, we have to sell ourselves. We have to be our own PR and manager and business owner. And, you know, I want to be a working self-employed artist, so I have to do the content. But it means that, you know, all my experience working in the record store and doing content, I've been doing that for like 2 years. I'm bringing those editing skills over, and, you know, I've figured out the algorithm. We have 70,000 followers on Instagram and of quite a few big videos, and I'm figuring out what things people really latch onto. Yeah. And, you know, it's an unfortunate side of being an artist, but it's a really important one, I think.
But you're absolutely right, and that's one of the main reasons why Connect, Curate, Create exists, is the recognition that a very small percentage of artists get grant funding. It's not something you can rely on every. You know, you're not going to get grant funding every time you apply. You have to get used to rejection. Yeah. Very small percentage of artists are represented by galleries. There are so few spaces for studios to show your work. it is, the it's not working in your favor. So you have to find a way to make it work for yourself. And we have these platforms now, global platforms, a stage you can put yourself on, and so Connect Create is helping to put you on that stage.
It's so good.
But then we meet artists like yourself who are already pretty good at it. And it's a wonderful thing. I mean, there's so much I can learn from you. You're in your own art Instagram, your own personal Instagram. I think it's terrific. In your preparation for the grad show, you set up the camera over your shoulder and at your easel, and you took us on a journey.
Yeah, I'm was at a point there where I was like, I am churning out so much work right now. I need to document it in some form so I can. It's also that building hype thing, I don't want to dump all my art right after the grad show's done and like do it all at once. So I think it was building that like ability for people to care about it, and hope that it can lead somewhere. Want it to just have a business or sell my work eventually, because got to make a living and got to make more art. But yeah, I think I'm still figuring it out, but it's so important. Yeah. I remember when we had our conversation at Maggie's space, talking to some other artists and about social media, and I think there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be learned. I think Honours offers like a social media class, but I doubt that. I don't know if it's up to date. I really doubt that it would be kind of communicating the things that are. It's tricky with institutional social media classes. It's probably going to be telling things that were relevant 5 years ago, unfortunately. But I think there is more that could be learnt for artists in general about how to put themselves out there on the internet.
Well, you said you figured out the algorithm. You figured out what the algorithm was doing yesterday. But what it's doing today is different to what it was doing yesterday.
It's different every single day.
And every algorithm is different.
And that through figuring it out, you have to spend more time on there. I like before doing that post the other day, I was like researching and seeing what videos do well from other people. You have to have a hook. You have to have a certain length of things. You need to have this many paragraphs of information. You need a viral audio. You need like all of these things. And they're all, it's like this really strategic thing that needs to be figured out.
Exactly, yeah. I think there's a couple of points there. Is one, it takes a lot of time and effort because it is a practice in and of itself. Yeah. So your 2 years of experience has got you to this point. It's always the algorithm, the platforms are always moving because they're in competition with each other. They are just trying to find new ways to capture our attention. So you've got to keep on top of that. But if you're trying to, as you say, just sit down at your easel to paint, or you're out in nature with a sketch pad and you just want to observe, but there's all this.
You also have to film yourself.
Yeah. I watch a lot of photographers do that, and the machinations that they go through, that we all go through when we're doing this stuff. The thing, it can take you away from that. So that's one side of it. The second side of it, I've forgotten my point, so I won't go there. But Audrey, the thing is you're doing something that is, this is the second point really, is to think of you do want to pursue a career as an artist. And even before you've only just started your honours program, you're already thinking ahead, okay, what is this world going to look like that I am going to be working in as an artist? And I want to keep doing the thing I love to do, the thing I'm passionate about, to have these create these human connections. How am I going to do that for myself? Because no one else is going to help do that.
I know. It's fully just on us to do it.
Yeah.
On artists to be like, okay, I want to be an artist. There's that, you need to please the art world and do the galleries and the conversation and,
Do you?
You also need to be happy in your own art and not just be performing for other people, because that can be really unhealthy. But there's also, you got to have an audience, and the general public need to connect as well. It's that, you know, I feel like it's kind of taboo to talk about it as an artist.
Shouldn't be though, should it?
It shouldn't. I think it's really taboo to be like, yeah, I want to be a working artist and sell my work, but I think it's reality. And you know, obviously, I am gonna make art no matter what happens. You know, I don't have a plan B. Not really. I think, you know, my plan B is to do art in a different way. Like, I would love to be a children's book illustrator or make comics or, you know, I design or literally anything as long as it's creative.
Yeah.
Because it's what gives me life. You know, art courses through my veins. It's very like so genuinely. So I gotta have that really specific plan and find ways to meet everything.
Yeah.
At the same time, you gotta travel. You
Yeah.
gotta explore.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I was just thinking of then is that, like, the signal box project that you did, you know, imagine, you know, the people you've had conversations with, they've just walked, you know, they're just out doing the shopping on Sandy Bay Road, and they've spoken to you, and you've inspired them. And one day I don't know, they see your artwork somewhere else in the world, and they're like, "Cool, I remember that conversation with Audrey. That was lovely. Yeah, I think I might get in touch," and then they might become a patron of yours, or you know, or commission you to make something. You know, who knows where this world is going? Who knows where the world is leading? We could get really anxious about it. You know, go back to your idea of climate. Not your idea, but the notion of climate anxiety. But we all need to do something about it for ourselves.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting out of this is, you know, you talked about hope versus action. You are taking action to be able to fulfill your dreams, your desires, to become a full-time working artist who can support themselves, because no one else is going to do it for you.
Exactly.
And I think that is absolutely inspirational. And I just, Audrey, that's really, I'm inspired.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm sure other people are too. How can people find your absolutely awesome Instagram account?
My Instagram is earth2ords. And yeah, at earth2ords. That's kind of my main thing. I also have a website, audreycarter.com, but I really need to update it. I will. But yeah, that's kind of my main thing. You can find me on there.
Yeah. Yeah, fabulous. Thank you so much for your time, Audrey. This has been incredible. I'm going to go away, and I'm looking forward to the edit because we've covered so much. But there is this golden thread in there that I've just tried to draw out. But I do think that, I'm really looking forward to following your journey, coming to next year's grad show, and seeing what you make.
Thank you,
in the
Tim.
time in between. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. It's good to be here.